two ways in which the IoT stacks are defined. First one is according to the functional stack, and another one is how IoT like data management and computation is happening in an IoT system. So this is called the functional stack, and another is called the compute stack. So there are two ways in which you can look at the IoT system, and they all kind of these two stacks are the representation of the same system. So you can think of them as two ways of representing or writing the same answer. Right. So based on your perspective, you may be looking at it as a functional stack or as a computational stack. So obviously there will be sensor nodes, there will be communication systems, and there will be an end application which will be required. So how do you realize those is by using different approaches. So these are the two different approaches in which you can have a look at an IoT system. And security, obviously, because security is a central theme, you have to have security on the edge, you have to have security on the communication system, applications need to be secured. So security is like an overarching theme which covers all the modules of the stack, whichever stack you may consider. Okay, so we have completed the things layer, and now we were looking at the communications network layer. We have completed the access network sublayer in the previous class, and we stopped with the network topology, if you remember. We stopped here, right? And I have just added one more slide here just so that you can understand. Somebody had asked me a question on what are the other different types of network topologies that are available. So I have added this slide just for your reference today, just to show what are the typically used network topologies in a typical computer network. Okay. So since IoT devices are also basically computers, a microcontroller is typically a computer on a chip, right? So whatever is feasible for a typical IT system or a typical computer network is also feasible for IoT systems. So here we have all the possible configurations that you will find in a typical IT system or a typical computer network, and you can also see that some of them can be taken and reused as it is for IoT systems also. Right? For example, the mesh and the hybrid architecture or star. So this what you see as 4, 6 and 7, they are kind of very ideally suited for applications in IoT systems. Right. So there are other configurations also. You have bus, ring, tree, etc., etc. So these are used but not very popular for IoT systems. You may see the tree type network architecture you will find very commonly being used in your computer labs. Right. There will be a lot of PCs which are connected together through one single central bus, and you just tap onto that to get to each and every PC. So these are different configurations. Shall we move ahead now? You will be learning about this in your computer networks course also, I think. You have reached the topology stage in computer networks?
No, sir.
Anyway, does not matter, but these are the kind of commonly used topologies which you will have to look at. And I hope you are able to understand what we are trying to do here, right? How the systems are interconnected with each other, and each of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. Correct? So you can see some obvious advantages and disadvantages for all of them. Point-to-point safety is the best. I mean, the security will be the highest, but you have a point-to-point connection only. So if this gets cut off, the whole network will be down. Bus, again, everything depends upon central bus. So resources are less required. It's cheaper to implement, but if the central bus goes down, the whole thing will go down. Ring network, again, very little resources are required because the connections are like one-to-one. So if you are using a wired connection, this is very cheap to implement. But again, if one connection breaks, the whole thing will go down. Star network, you can see this is what we use for connecting your dumb devices to a central processing unit or like a hub. And from the hub only, you do all the processing and putting the data to the cloud and all that. So this is one common configuration for IoTs. Tree network, again, if you see, is a variation of the bus network. This is also used in conventional computer systems where you have one single gigabit Ethernet which is kind of running around the entire factory or the floor or the lab, and you have small you may call it as routers, or you may call it as hubs or switches, whatever, depending on the size of the network. You will have all these subunits which kind of again transfer the data to individual PCs. So this is also something commonly used for IT networks, not commonly used in IoT networks. Number 5 that you see. Mesh network, which is given in number 6, is common for IoT systems where you have multiple devices which are talking to each other and where redundancy is very important. So this is kind of a network which is relevant when you have systems which are working in environments which can be dangerous for the system. So there is a possibility that one or two of these nodes may get knocked off because of some reason. Right? For example, if it is in the field or if it is kept somewhere where there is a risk of maybe say landslide, or where there is a risk of some animals attacking the nodes and taking it away and those kind of things. So these nodes may get knocked off anytime. But if that happens, the whole network should not go down. And that is why the data collected by them is shared between all the nodes in the network so that the network remains more or less robust. So mesh network is something which is used for situations where you have robustness or the system downtime as a very critical component. And hybrid systems, obviously you have several cases where you have different multiple different kinds of configurations coming together. So based on your requirements, most likely when you are developing an IoT based system, your network will be a hybrid system. Because there is no hard and fast rule on what kind of system should be there for an IoT network. So typically you will end up using hybrid kind of a configuration only, where you may have multiple star connections followed by multiple mesh connections. Okay, so higher function devices are typically mesh connected, and the reduced function devices or the low intelligence devices are typically connected in star to a full functional device or a high functioning device. So that is how typically the configurations will look like. Can we go to the next slide now? Any queries?
Yes, sir.
So we go to the next slide. The next part of the communication network is the backhaul or the gateway and the backhaul network sublayer. So why is gateway and backhaul needed? So the idea is that you have something like this. The network looks something like this typically. So what I'm showing here is the LoRa network, long range network. So, but the structure remains same for almost all the IoT systems. Okay. So what you have is you have a lot of the end nodes, actual sensors on the edge which are sitting there. So you have sensors which are detecting the pets, which are detecting water, trash can, vending machine, monitoring gas. So many sensors are there which are connected. All these sensors are sending data continuously to your higher functioning devices which work as gateways. So you can see these are all the different colors indicate that they could be operating on different protocols. Okay, one could be working on LoRa, another could be working on maybe something else. Okay, could be you are working on Wi-Fi. The third one could be working on 3G. So you could have multiple devices, all of them working on different technologies. Some could be working on Zigbee, some could be working on Bluetooth. So these are all different protocols which are being used to communicate with the individual edge device. Right? Because there are so many protocols available now. So any manufacturer could decide any kind of protocol and make the sensor using that. And ideally, when you are designing an IoT network, your system should be robust to any of this. If I like to buy a sensor from the market, I should be able to buy it and very simply integrate it with the already existing network. I need not have to struggle with only using one particular type of sensor or on only one particular type of a manufacturer, right? So you can think of it like the Apple versus Android ecosystem that you have. Right? So if you're stuck with the Apple ecosystem, you can buy only Apple devices. You cannot have any other option. So that restricts all of your communication, all of your software, everything to Apple-based ecosystem. But if you have an Android device, you can buy any mobile phone from any manufacturer and it will work very well with the existing 3G, 4G networks. So you do not have to bother about any validation. You don't have to do anything of that sort. So that is the difference. Typically, the IoT networks kind of take that approach. You should be able to buy any device from any manufacturer using any protocol at the final mile, the last mile protocol, and you should be able to integrate them with the existing network. So your pet tracking system that you're showing here could be working on Zigbee. Your smoke alarm could be working on Wi-Fi. Your water meter could be working on Sigfox. So you could have any protocol which could be working on the front end, but they all need to be integrated. They need to be concentrated into one single or one set of data which makes sense at the back end. Right? So if all the data is coming from one single house, you should be able to package them properly. You should be able to put them in a proper pattern and send it to the back end where the processing can happen in a decent fashion. Right? So that is the idea of a concentrator. It also makes sure that all the different communication protocols are all kind of read properly and integrated into one single data packet or multiple data packets which can be sent to the final network server or wherever it is located. So that is the role of a concentrator or a gateway. Right? And once the data leaves the gateway, it is carrying a large amount of information, because we are showing here only 1 or 2 or 3 houses, but the typical gateways could be handling about 1,000 or 10,000 devices. Let's imagine data from 10,000 devices going in one shot. So like that, you will have multiple gateways. So here in this case, imagine that each gateway could be handling 1,000 devices. So these 3 gateways alone them will be carrying about the data from 3,000 different devices. So these 3,000 devices sending the data together will be a large amount of data. So you do need to have a more robust and more bandwidth, high bandwidth kind of a system or a communication system which can transfer that huge amount of data to the network server. And that is where the backhaul layer comes in. Here in this case, they have given 3G or Ethernet as the backhaul, but it could be any other protocol which can handle large amounts of data. Ethernet, as you know, can handle large amounts of data, right? So it could be 4G, it could be Ethernet, it could be any other thing which is kind of which can handle large amounts of data. So that is the function of a backhaul communication system. Backhaul or back end. So it's kind of hauling large amounts of data to the network server. So that is what we are looking at here, the gateway and the concentrator part. Does it make sense? Can I go ahead? Any questions?
No, sir.
So this is what I have described in this slide. Right? So gateway takes care of the intermediate communication, and it's kind of make sure that all the protocol conversion and other things happen in the gateway. Okay. And this is the typical idea. Smart objects could be static or mobile. Gateway is typically static. So there are some exceptions to this. DSRC is one such standard. DSRC is a very common protocol which is used for vehicle-to-vehicle communications or vehicle-to-infrastructure communications. So in autonomous vehicles or in modern vehicular technology, it is referred to as V2X communication. V, and then there is the digit 2, and then there is X. X in X-Men. Okay. So V2X communication. So X actually stands for V2V, V2I, V2G. So all those things are actually replaced by one single called X. X could be anything. So V2V is vehicle to vehicle communication, V2G is vehicle to grid communication, V2I is vehicle to infrastructure communication. So you will see once 5G networks become more popular, you will see a lot more improvement in the vehicular networks, and you will see most of the vehicles will begin to have their own IoT chip built in. What you have seen in MG Hector is just a beginning. So eventually within 5 years, as when the 5G becomes popular, you will find almost all of your new cars will come equipped with a M2M chip, maybe Airtel or Jio or whatever. So you will have your own IoT 5G chip, which will actually be be connecting to the 5G network and communicating the data from the vehicle, and the details will be received from the infrastructure to the vehicle. So that is going to happen very shortly. And the competing standards that you have is, one competing standard is DSRC, and another one that we have is 5G. So these are the two communication standards which are kind of competing with each other for prevalence. Most likely 5G will win. So, but still, it's a good idea that you have an understanding of DSRC also. DSRC is a variant of what you call as Wi-Fi today. So it's kind of a standard which is being pushed by many people. So it has got a chance, but I strongly suspect 5G may be the dominating standard in the near future. Even for vehicle to vehicle communication. I'm talking only about vehicle to vehicle communication. Can I go to the next layer? I did not ask you. It's okay. Can we go to this one? A network transport sublayer?
Yes, sir.
So the third layer, that is sublayer that you have, is the network transport sublayer. So what does this actually mean? It basically means that you need to have a higher level protocol which can take multiple different media, multiple different kind of protocols, integrate them all together, and create a interface which can be used by the application layers. So what are these kind of protocols? These are like typically referred to as internet protocol, or the ones that are built above IP, which is called UDP and TCP. Okay, so UDP and TCP, these things you may be studying in your computer networks. If you're not learning it, you will. I'll try to take a separate class on this. But remember that internet protocol, TCP and UDP, which is commonly used in all computer networks, even in your typical IT infrastructure, are useful here also. Okay. So we will. Please let me know maybe after the first periodical is over, or I'll wait till the first periodical or the first assessment, whatever the evaluation pattern for the semester says. And then I will just see if you are not learning this as a part of your syllabus, or I'll talk to the faculty member also. If that is not a part of the learning curriculum or the syllabus, we will try to have a separate workshop or something like that, using which you can kind of learn these protocols. Okay, because computer and communication engineers should know all the communication protocols very clearly. What can be used under what conditions and what cannot be used, what are the advantages, disadvantages. They are important. So we will try to give you some heads up on that as well. Okay, I'll be talking to Gandhiraj sir on this, and we'll decide, and we'll try to make sure that you learn UDP, TCP, etc. But strictly because it is not a part of our syllabus, I can't take it in the class. I do not have enough time to do this. So we may have it as a separate workshop or something like that, so that you are brought up to speed on this, because in placements and interviews, they may ask you these things. So it's good to know. Okay, are you people okay with this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that is the idea of network transport sublayer, and at last we go to the network management sublayer, where you have the final kind of connectivity part, where you directly, your application or your API directly communicates with the rest of the lower level protocols. So typically what happens is that there are two ways in which the data communication happens between a application and the sensor. One is called the push model, and another is called the pull model. This you may have also done when you were when you may have developed some kind of an IoT system or an IoT solution. Right? So what happens here is, there is, in the push model, you will have the sensor which is continuously reporting its status, even if somebody asks it or not. So just simply keep pushing the data. Right? So that is called the push model. So like for every 1 minute or so, the sensor will continue to send the data. If you are reading it or not reading it, that is not a problem for it. It has been defined to send the data at 1 minute intervals. It will keep on sending the data at 1 minute intervals. That is called the push model. The It is pushing the data out. If it is relevant to the receiver or not, that is not its problem. So that is the idea of a push model. On the other hand, you have something called the pull model, where the application from the user side will query the sensor as and when data is needed. Right, so only when the data is needed, you send a query out, the sensor sees the query and replies. That is the idea of the pull model. But in many cases, what happens is that you have a hybrid of these. So sometimes you may have periodically pushing, and whenever the requirement is there, then there is a pull request which comes in also. So there are several hybrid models also which are feasible. Just give me a second. Okay, am I still audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So again, as you can see here, the protocols which you can use here are HTTP. The first one is HTTP. This is very popular. I hope you know HTTP is a very common protocol. All your web browsers are designed to load HTML pages, right? So you have Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP. Right? So HTTP is a very standard kind of the communication protocol. The whole internet is kind of based out of this, right? So you have HTTP and you have HTTPS. So HTTP secured sites are also available, so which are used typically by banking and other things, kind of agencies which prevent any kind of eavesdropping and security issues. So they stop those security issues by using HTTPS extension. So any browser that you use, and any website that requires you to type HTTP:// is basically asking you to use the HTTP communication protocol to query the server and collect the data and bring it back onto the browser window. Right, so that is the idea of HTTP, and typically HTTP has a client server type of a system. So now what happens is that the client will connect to the server, and the client will either request data or send the data to the server. So in the case of IoT systems, each of the sensors could be a client. Just like in a typical IT system, whoever is opening the browser is the client, and the server is sitting somewhere, maybe in US or in Japan or in Canada or somewhere. You are querying the server, and the server puts the data in a form that you can understand and sends it back, and it is populated on your screen as a web page. That is what happens in case of a typical web query. Okay, so this is what is happening in case of IoT systems also. We bring it down to a lower scale where the server is the central application and the sensor is the client, right? Unfortunately, the problem that you have with HTTP is that it is a very fat protocol. Fat protocol in the sense that it requires a lot of additional data that has to be sent along with it. So you will have header files, you will have a lot of extra bits which are transferred as a result of this. The reason for doing this was that we wanted to make sure that the data is reaching the computer which it is designed for, it is secure, and so many things. So as you add more and more layers of reliability and security into a packet, the data packets become fatter and fatter. Information content will be less, but the packet size will become larger. So unfortunately, as a result of that, what has happened is that it has become unsuitable for use in IoT systems. Because in IoT systems, you want to send the data quickly. You can do with lesser amount of security and lesser amount of reliability. But the critical problem that we have with typical IoT systems is that you should be able to use low amount of power. Bandwidth will be usually very poor. And you do not have onboard memory also. HTTP was designed for use with PCs or laptops or servers. So there is no problem related to power, or there is no problem related to memory, or there is no problem related to bandwidth. Like you have all kinds of connectivity available, but IoT devices, you don't have that option. No? If you are using a Node MCU or if you are using an Arduino, you have very little possibility of using very large power, or you have very little amount of memory on board. So you cannot implement the HTTP protocol and you cannot transfer and receive data over HTTP. It becomes very difficult, right? So one possible solution you have is to use WebSockets. So typically WebSockets kind of allow you to do this a little bit. And usually you will find them being combined with other two important protocols which are used in IoT nowadays. One is called MQTT and another is called COAP, which we'll be seeing in the next slide. So this is WebSocket is typically combined with MQTT to handle the IoT part, IoT communication. And this is a very common communication protocol. We will be looking at this in detail in the upcoming module. Okay, so both MQTT and COAP, we will look at it in great details in the upcoming section. So I'm just giving you a brief idea now. We'll look at it in great detail because MQTT and COAP are the two major protocols which are used for IoT communication. And this is what you will mostly be dealing with in the initial phases of your career. Because you will be designing APIs and you will be sitting at a PC and trying to communicate with the sensors through APIs. And mostly you will be using MQTT or COAP to talk to them. Because at the back end or backhaul network, those things you will not be designing because they're already existing. 3G, 4G networks already exist, right? So no big deal there. But the main problem will be to connect the sensors to the cloud, and at the other end, from the cloud, how to get the data more reliably. So that is the two parts of the system that you will most end up working. And at this end, when you're sitting at a PC and trying to query the sensor somewhere sitting outside through the cloud and get the data from the sensors through the cloud, MQTT and COAP will come in very handy. So this is the second type, COAP, Constrained Application Protocol. And again, you can see that it is giving you some additional functionality such as observation, which requires and which automatically gives you any change in the state of the system. That means if the new data comes in or if the new sensing input is available, the whole change in the state of the input will happen. That is input state in the sense the data that is getting collected. If there is a change in any data which is stored in a particular location, you should be able to transfer it directly without any problems. So that is the idea of observation here, and COAP protocols are used for that particular. Okay. And this is MQTT. MQTT stands for message queue telemetry transport, and it runs on the TCP network. So typically, this is one which you will find in many cases. If you are using ThinkSpeak IoT or something like that, you typically tend to connect through MQTT connections. But there is a small problem here. You may have a situation where you may require you to hold a connection open at all times whenever the need for polling the results are concerned. So in that cases, you may have issues, and this works very well when you have slightly larger number of resources, slightly larger amounts of resources to read the data. I was able to use this MQTT protocol to communicate using an Arduino Uno. Okay, so in the modern standards, it may not be very difficult. So if you're using a Raspberry Pi or something, it will not be a problem at all. I was able to initiate a connection and I was able to read and kind of send the data through the MQTT protocol without much difficulty. So it's not a big problem. It can be done, but I strongly suggest that you use slightly more powerful systems to use MQTT, but it is feasible. Okay. And what are the other, how do you choose which one? Do you want COAP? Do you want MQTT? All those things. So mainly the thing is that whatever is the quality of service and what is the major cost that you need. Okay, so if your quality of service is very important, that means you need to be continuously connected and you do not want packet drops to happen. You want the bandwidth to be very high at all times. Like the reading should be happening at a very high quality at all times. So in those cases, the quality of service requirements are very high, and based on that, you have to choose your protocol. Or if you have a situation where you need power consumption as the requirement, then you may have to choose protocols accordingly. So there are several considerations, external considerations, which actually cause you to choose a proper network protocol. And this is I'll stop with this very quickly. I think I have overshot the time. So I'll just go to this slide and I'll stop. Okay, so if you look at this, these are the different communication protocols which are used for different kind of layers. Okay, so if you want to use the network, at the lower level, you have the Wi-Fi or 3G, whatever network protocols, Bluetooth, etc. At the higher level, you have more complicated protocols like TCP and UDP, etc. At the application layer, you will have more complicated layers, which require things, or which basically use things like HTTP, or things like you have this Weave, Android things, Zigbee, etc., etc. So all these kind of happen at a higher level. Okay, so that is the idea behind the protocols. I think we are. I'll stop for this today, because next we have the third layer, or the final layer, that we have to talk about. So this is the communication layer that we have, and 4 different sub layers of a communication part, and for different layers you need different protocols. So this figure is useful because you can, OSI layers are typically used as a reference layer for any communication protocol that is being developed, so that you know which protocol lies at which layer. And you can see these are the other protocols which are used. I think you already know home area network, personal area network, local area network, wide area network, and so on. A low power wide area network. So these are all different types of networks, and not all of them use all the layers which are possible. Some of them miss some of the layers, some of them do not require it, just to save maybe communication bandwidth, or to save on the amount of power which is required to transmit, etc. So this is kind of a comprehensive figure which will help you out. Okay. So if there are there any questions? I'll stop sharing now. If you have any queries, please go ahead and ask. Okay. So I'm assuming that there are no questions in today's class. So what I will do is I'll just take the attendance 1 second. Okay, and then I think I will break for now. If you have any queries, please go ahead and ask. I will upload. I have uploaded the first 2 PPTs for your reference already. Please have a look at that and see if you are able to understand it. If you are not understanding it, please contact me. Okay, so this third PPT will be uploaded as soon as it gets over. Most likely by the end of this week, I will be uploading this PPT also. So you can just have a look at that. Okay, and I'll give you the assignment by tomorrow or day after tomorrow. And I'll tell you what to do and how to go about it. Okay. So thank you all for attending. We'll continue in the next class. Next class will be a doubt clearing session. So please go through the 2 PPTs and just let me know if you have any queries. Okay. So thank you all for attending. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.